Right now, as you're watching this, one of the most powerful storms to hit Australia in years is tearing through the west coast. Wind gusts of up to 125 kilometers per hour, tens of thousands of homes without power, a shed photographed being tossed into a swimming pool, an 11-year-old boy missing for 8 hours in Perth's suburbs during the wild weather thankfully found safe, and the Bureau of Meteorology warning that the worst is still moving east. Today we're breaking down what's actually happening with the storm, who's in its path, and the bigger question that events like this keep forcing Australians to ask: is extreme weather becoming our new normal? Let's start with what's happening on the ground right now. An unusually deep low-pressure system moved into Western Australia's southwest coast today, bringing what the Bureau of Meteorology describes as a once-in-5 years weather event. That phrase, once in 5 years, means this is a storm of a severity that meteorologists would typically expect to see only once every 5 years. It's not a once-in-a-lifetime event, but it's well outside what Australians experience in an ordinary winter. Wind gusts of up to 125 kilometers per hour have been recorded in Perth and along the coast. Western Power reported about 10,000 customers without electricity statewide, with the figure rising through the afternoon. The Department of Fire and Emergency Services issued a clear directive to residents: act now and stay safe. Damaging to destructive winds expected this afternoon and evening. Stay indoors, away from windows. Tie down loose outdoor items. Avoid the roads. The images coming out of the affected areas are striking. In Mandurah, on the southwest coast, about 70 kilometers from Perth, a shed was photographed airborne and landing in a residential swimming pool. Trees down across roads. Power lines fallen. The kind of visual that makes the abstract threat of a major storm very concrete, very quickly. A major police search operation was launched in Perth's western suburbs after an 11-year-old autistic, nonverbal boy went missing overnight during the wild weather. He was missing for nearly 8 hours, with police, SES volunteers on foot and on horseback, all involved in the search. He was found safe, but the incident is a reminder that storms like this create dangers well beyond the obvious physical damage. The storm is not staying put. That's the critical point for anyone watching from outside Western Australia. The cold front and low-pressure system are expected to sweep across western parts of South Australia during Monday, bringing rain and wind gusts of up to 100 kilometers per hour, before moving across the Adelaide region later in the day. Severe weather warnings are already in place for parts of South Australia. The system is then expected to continue east, meaning parts of Victoria and New South Wales could experience elevated weather conditions later in the week, as the system weakens but still carries moisture and unsettled air inland. The Bureau of Meteorology has been tracking this system for several days and has been issuing progressively stronger warnings as it developed. The forecasting has been accurate and timely. One of the lessons learned from past events is that early warning saves lives, and the Bureau's communication this time has been clear. Now let's zoom out, because a storm like this doesn't just raise questions about emergency preparedness, it raises much bigger questions about Australia's relationship with extreme weather and whether we're ready for what's coming. Australia has always been a land of extreme weather: droughts, floods, cyclones, bushfires. The climate here has always been variable and intense, but what climate scientists have been documenting with increasing clarity over the past 2 decades is that the frequency and severity of extreme weather events in Australia is increasing. Not every single event, but the overall pattern: more intense storms, longer droughts, more severe flood events, extended fire seasons, is clear in the data. The Black Summer bushfires of 2019 and 2020 burned 18.6 million hectares, an area larger than many countries. The 2022 Eastern Australia floods killed more than 20 people and caused billions of dollars of damage. The January 2025 storm that hit the NSW East Coast left 260,000 homes without power at its peak and prompted a natural disaster declaration. And now, today, a once-in-5 years storm is battering Western Australia with 125 km/h winds and moving east. The pattern is not random. It is directional. Australia's weather is becoming more extreme, and the infrastructure, the planning systems, and the communities in the path of these events are not always keeping up. There's a specific vulnerability in Australia's power grid that events like today's storm expose. Australia's electricity infrastructure was largely designed and built in an era of more predictable weather. Power lines, particularly in suburban areas, were strung on. Wooden poles, functional, and cost-effective when storms were less frequent and less severe. But wooden poles and above-ground lines are exactly what high-speed winds destroy first. The debate about undergrounding power lines, burying them below the surface, where they're protected from wind damage, has been running for years in Australia. It's expensive. Estimates for undergrounding a suburb vary from tens of millions to hundreds of millions of dollars, depending on the area and soil conditions. State governments have been selective about where they invest. Progress has been slow. Every major storm that knocks out power to tens of thousands of homes renews that debate. And every time the answer is the same yes. Undergrounding would reduce the impact, but it costs more than governments have been willing to spend. Until the cost of inaction in emergency response, economic disruption, and the physical damage to communities becomes greater than the cost of prevention. Some analysts argue we are reaching that tipping point. The cumulative cost of storm damage, emergency response, and economic disruption from extreme weather events is now running into billions of dollars annually in Australia. At some point, the investment in more resilient infrastructure becomes the cheaper option. There's also the question of insurance, and this is one that affects millions of Australian homeowners directly. Insurance premiums for Australian homes in storm-prone, flood-prone, and bushfire-prone areas have been rising sharply for years. In some areas, they have more than doubled in the past 5 years. In others, insurers have stopped offering coverage altogether, leaving homeowners unable to insure their properties at any price. The Insurance Council of Australia has been warning for years that certain parts of the country are becoming uninsurable, not because of anything the individual homeowner did wrong, but because the actuarial risk of extreme weather damage in those locations has crossed the threshold, where insurance is commercially viable. For a homeowner in a flood-prone part of Queensland, or a bushfire risk area of Victoria, or increasingly, a storm-prone part of coastal Western Australia, this creates a devastating bind. You may own your home outright. You may have lived there for decades, but you can no longer insure it. And if the next storm takes the roof off, the financial loss is entirely yours. This is not a hypothetical future scenario. It is happening now. And the storm moving through Western Australia today is for thousands of homeowners, not just a weather event. It's a financial stress test. What should you actually do if you're in the path of this system? For people in Western Australia right now, follow the Bureau of Meteorology and your local emergency services. Their advice is clear, and it's there for a reason. Stay indoors. Don't drive through floodwater. Check on elderly neighbors. If you're in a vulnerable structure, consider whether you need to move to somewhere more solid. For people in South Australia, preparing for the system's arrival, the advice is the same. Take today to prepare. Secure loose outdoor items now before the winds arrive. Charge your devices. Have a torch and some supplies ready in case power goes out. Know who your most vulnerable neighbors are and check on them. For people in eastern states, monitor the forecasts over the next few days. The system will weaken as it moves inland, but it will still carry moisture and unsettled conditions. If you're planning outdoor activities next week, keep an eye on the Bureau of Meteorology updates. Today's storm is a vivid reminder of something that Australia sometimes forgets. In the gaps between major events, this is a continent of extremes. The weather here can be beautiful and brutal in the same week. The communities that do best are the ones that take the warnings seriously. Prepare properly, and don't wait until after the damage is done to ask whether things could have been handled better. The once-in-5-year storm has arrived. The question of whether Australia's infrastructure, its planning systems, and its communities are ready for the once-in-every-year storms that may be coming is one that every level of government needs. to answer, and answer honestly. Are you in Western Australia or South Australia right now? Are you feeling the impact of this storm? Let me know in the comments. I'll be monitoring updates as the system moves east. Stay safe out there. Like and subscribe for more Australian news explained simply. See you next time.